report to you, our armed forces fought with honor and valor. And as president, I can report to the nation, aggression is defeated, the war is over.
President Bush announcing the end of the Gulf War. And joining me now, two men who knew him well. Former Vice President Dick Cheney, who served as Bush's Secretary of Defense during that war, and James Baker, who was the Secretary of State. Gentlemen, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. Secretary Baker, let me start with you. You have called George Bush one of our most underrated presidents. What is it that you think people failed to understand about George Bush, and why do you think so many people missed it?
Well, I'm not sure why they missed it, Chris, except perhaps because he was not reelected. He was a one-term president, in my view, and I would bet this is true with Dick Cheney as well. He was the very best one-term president this country's ever had, and perhaps one of the very best presidents of all time. But he didn't blow his own horn. One of his wonderful character traits was to let other people take credit. That was something he was brought up with, and that's the way he operated. But he was an extraordinarily, if you think about it, you go back and look at the record, he was an extraordinarily consequential president of the United States, particularly in the arena of foreign affairs.
Let me pick up on that with Vice President Cheney. I think it's fair to say that clearly the centerpiece of the Bush presidency was the victory in the Gulf War over Saddam Hussein. What stands out for you about the way that he led that fight, and what about the controversy that we continue to hear his decision not to go on to Baghdad and topple Saddam?
Well, in terms of his leadership, important thing to remember, Chris, is what we put together during those years with Scowcroft at NSC and Jim at State, me at Defense, and then, of course, the President's Commander-in-Chief. We'd all worked together back during the Ford years. And it was, in my opinion, I'm probably biased, but about the most successful national security, foreign affairs, defense team that had been my experience to watch operate.
No, you're absolutely accurate, Dick.
And it was, well, the President obviously was a key part of it. And Jim and Brent and I would have breakfast every Wednesday morning. And most of the time we could solve our problems among us. Once in a while we'd have to take it to him and then he'd resolve it. But he was a consequential leader, as you've said. His knowledge of foreign leaders, people he'd worked with over the years, his understanding of the military, his willingness to support the military. We gave him a very long list of things we wanted to have in the Gulf before we launched the offensive weapons. He didn't turn them down on anything. He approved all of them and said, all right, now show me how you're going to do it. He was a great leader.
Secretary Baker, one of the things that strikes me about George Bush is that he didn't take the easy path. He left Yale to volunteer and to become the youngest Navy pilot. He left Connecticut. He could have had a very comfortable life there to strike out on his own and become an oil man in Texas. What do you think that was about?
Well, I think it was about taking on the hard challenges. He was not afraid to take risks. No risk, no reward kind of thing. But let me say a quick word, if I might, Chris, about the centerpiece, as you said, of his foreign policy presidency, the war, the first Gulf War, which was, in my view, a textbook example of the way to fight a war. You tell the world what you're going to do. You get the world, all the rest of the world behind you to do it. You do that and nothing more. You bring the troops home, and then you get other countries to pay for it. We've never done that before. That is a textbook example of the way to fight a war, but that, while that may be the centerpiece of his foreign policy accomplishments, it certainly wasn't the only one. And you look at the fact that he was able to manage and end a peaceful end of the Cold War. That was a huge, huge accomplishment.
Mr. Vice President, in 2015, President Bush told a biographer.
All right, it's enough for this. Listen to these New World Order puppets talk about H.W. Bush, who just passed away here a couple days ago. And they're going on and on about how great of a president he was. Number 41 had only one term, but yet, you know, Cheney talks about how they were together in the Ford administration, and both of them obviously have a long history of being in the government and being the puppets that they are and that they were. And it just goes to show you that these men, Mr. James Baker on the right and Vice President Dick Cheney, will continue to cover for their ex-boss, cover for who they really work for, cover for what their intentions were in the Gulf War and any other war before and since then. And even, you know, they won't talk about how H.W. was there when Kennedy was taken out. And obviously he was in the CIA for a long time. And in fact, another video yesterday I watched talked about how the New York Times talks about him being the Skull and Bones 322 and how he was successful in being a CIA director because he could keep a secret. And we all know these gentlemen have lots and lots of secrets that they don't tell the American public. And here on Fox News Sunday, you know, we got to call fake news again, fake news, because they make up fake stories and they fake that they really care about our country, and they fake that they really care about the American people. And Mr. Baker, you know, summed it up pretty well about getting the rest of the world to pay for a war that we wanted, a war that we started, and a war that continues to this day as we continue to have our troops in Iraq because of his son W after the whole 9/11 debacle. But again, don't be fooled by these gentlemen or these guys, whatever you want to call them, but they are fake from the word go. And President H.W. Bush probably really did pass away, as they both look pretty sorrowful, as they all know that it's appointed unto man once to die, and after this the judgment, that they too will pass away. And to the Almighty Abba be glory forever, because his kingdom is coming, his will be done on earth as it is in Shemaim. And we don't have to put up with the New World Order agenda forever and ever, only up to a certain time, and then he's going to call it quits. Peace out on Fire for Yah.
I've seen people destroyed, and I think it's very unfair. Some of the media outlets that I deal with, the fake news, fake news. I think it's a disgrace, an absolute disgrace, but I don't think they care.